It's time now for our business update with Stephen Carroll. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Jeannie.
Now, today should be the opening of the Geneva Motor Show, but it's been cancelled over coronavirus.
That's right. Carmakers nonetheless pressing ahead with their product launches. BMW today unveiling a new all-electric concept car, which is part of this industry-wide drive to sell more electric vehicles. The company expects that by next year, a quarter of all the cars that it sells in Europe will be electrified. BMW unveiling that new model in Munich, where it's also dealing with the consequences of the coronavirus. 150 staff working at the car maker there have been quarantined after an employee was confirmed to have caught the virus. More broadly, the outbreak has presented a challenge to the motor industry as a whole. China, a major market for new cars, as well as a hub for production. I've been speaking about this to BMW board member Pieter Nota about the impact that they've seen on their business.
We expect in 2020 to have another record year of sales, so we expect slight growth. And although Corona, yes, will have short-term some impact, you already mentioned China, it is much too early to say what the impact on full year will be. So we still expect slight growth in the year 2020 full year, based also on our great new range of products. We have actually reopened our factories in China on the 17th of February, so they are up and running again. We also see good other indicators in China, like the number of dealerships that have reopened is already at a level of 85%, so 464 out of 551 dealers have already reopened. And so far, we haven't seen any major implications on supply chain in other parts of the world, also affected by China.
In the meantime, European stock markets are seeing a recovery today after that massive sell-off last week.
So London, Paris and Frankfurt all trading significantly up this lunchtime. Investors very focused on this idea that central banks and governments will step in and offer stimulus to counteract the slump provoked by the spread of the virus. Mark Carney from the Bank of England, the latest to say that he'll take all necessary steps to support the UK economy. Finance ministers in the G7 holding a phone conference around now to discuss their policy response. These messages being welcomed by investors.
Wall Street had a huge rebound last night after significant losses from last week. A lot of investors are betting on the Fed will help out this time, and a synchronized central bank's movement might be in the making. And so investors are hoping that for the rest of the month, the Fed will roll out more accommodating policies to help out the stock markets.
Also keeping an eye on the price of oil for you today. Brent crude, the international benchmark, and WTI both up pretty significantly in trading. Brent crude up over 2% there. Now that's of course following a big fall also over coronavirus in recent weeks. The rebound partly down to stimulus hopes that we're seeing on the stock markets as well, but also the prospect that the OPEC cartel of oil producing nations may decide to cut output again when they meet later this week.
The coronavirus, of course, hitting a lot of companies hard, and Twitter has told its employees to tweet from home.
That's right, Twitter telling its employees in Japan, South Korea and Hong Kong to work from home, and has strongly encouraged all of its 5,000 staff members around the world to stay away from their offices and work remotely instead. This news coming after the social media firm banned all non-essential business travel. It's already pulled out of the South by Southwest Festival in Texas too.
Here in France, dairy farmers are the latest group to sound the alarm over damage from the virus.
China's a major market for exports of dairy products from France, particularly powdered milk, but prices have slumped in recent weeks as orders have dried up. Farmers' associations fear they may lose important contracts with Chinese suppliers if demand doesn't pick up soon. Yuka Royer reports.
The French dairy industry reeling from trade disruptions caused by a new coronavirus. As orders from China plummeted, so did export prices. According to a French Dairy Processors Association, prices of powdered milk and related products have fallen by 6 to 9% in recent weeks. This farmer in Alsace region produces 700,000 litres of milk every year. He's afraid of falling prices.
Today, when a problem has a worldwide impact, you feel it at local levels because global trends set the tone for local prices. It's clear that the problem will eventually affect individual farmers.
For the time being, only large-scale industrial firms are directly hit by the supply chain disruptions. China accounted for 9% of French dairy exports last year, worth 650 million euros.
The first immediate impact is that we can't send goods to China. It's useless to make products that end up going nowhere. So we halt production and find different solutions. If the situation continues, well, that puts 650 million euros at risk.
As the virus spreads in France, there's concern some regions could be placed on lockdown. That could disrupt milk collection and risk products going to waste, as milk, once collected, can't be kept for more than 72 hours.
In Australia, the national news agency, the Australian Associated Press, is to close after 85 years in business.
The agency is jointly owned by 4 media corporations in Australia, and its closure comes after severe cutbacks in the industry there in recent years. Media companies, as elsewhere in the world, have suffered from a drop in advertising revenues. 140 journalists will lose their jobs when AAP ceases operations in June. The Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, describing the news as a matter of real concern, while the opposition leader called it a tragedy for democracy.
And just to wrap up today's business news, the consumer goods group Unilever has reached an important milestone in terms of gender equality.
So the Anglo-Dutch company makes consumer goods that range from Ben & Jerry's ice cream to Dove soap, and it says it's now reached gender balance across its global management team. Half of the company's 14,000 managers are now women. That's up from 38% in 2010. Unilever is also one of the best performers in the British government's gender pay gap report, where it shows that median hourly pay for women is actually higher than it is for men across the whole company. This is interesting because the former CEO, Paul Pullman, really kind of pushed ahead on sustainability issues and issues of social conscience in the company, and it seems that it has been taken up by his successor as well.
That's very encouraging news. Stephen, thank you so much for that. Stephen Carroll there with our business update.